Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg's coming to you on the 5th of January, 21. Time on deck, 19,1000 hours Central Standard Time. And I've got special guests here tonight with us. Tonight I have special guest General Ken Chrosniak and also John Hollerman. Now, y'all might know I've had General Chrosniak on my channel about maybe 3 or 4 times already. And we've had John Hollerman on. I'll get y'all both be generals. John's from done here. We've had John Hollerman on my channel once talking preparations, and he talked basically what to do with grid down the end of the nation was that title. And I know we had 4,000 views on that. So you guys like John apparently. So we've got them both back here, double barrel, same time tonight. And so this will be an interesting conversation. I hope y'all enjoy this. We do have a presentation we're going to go through. Now, for those of you that don't know, General Chrosniak actually started out as an enlisted man in the service and got promoted into being an officer. So he knows how to make a living, how to work. And and he actually is an active firefighter even now. So, my hat's off to him. He's a real hero. He's had a lot of commands, and he can talk to that some more if he'd like to. He's been to both of my power grid defense conferences, guys. He spoke at both of them. And John Hollerman, well, he is quite involved in. Tell us about your rescue stuff you did with the military there, John. You were teaching evasion, and tell us about that briefly.
Sure. So my background is I was a former United States Air Force SEER instructor. SEER stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. Primarily, our job was to train pilots, navigators, anybody that flew on a plane for a job, how to survive if they got shot down behind enemy lines, how to evade the enemy. We taught them resistance techniques, anti-interrogation techniques, and how to escape capture. So that was my background in the military. Yep.
Yeah, that's tough business, but that means you're eminently qualified to talk prepping topics, and he is quite involved in our power grid defense. All right, we got people starting to come in the room now. We got 32 people in here. A lot of the people who normally come in here is watching this rocket crash on one of my buddies' channels. He's got 5,000 views on there right now watching that rocket come down. Anyway, I did a video on the Chinese Long March come down. I had a lot of views for that one back when that came down. But we're trying to save the world, people here. We're here to make a big difference. And that's why I bring you videos like this. I call this part of my eyes wide open and head on a swivel series, so you'll know to watch and be prepared for what's coming. And Lord Almighty, these days we're being challenged left and right, internationally, maybe by the sun, because our magnetic field is decreasing rapidly, which makes us more susceptible to coronal mass ejections. And even internally, we've got so much strife in this country right now. We've not seen a time like this in internal strife since the 1860s, and I would wager that people have got more anger in them today than they did then. We just have a lot to look at, guys. That's why we need to prepare. That's why you need to subscribe to my channel, bang the notification bell, and click all so you can see more of these videos about what's coming, what you can do about it, so you can inform your friends and families, because the more people that prep, the better off we all are. And also, I've got videos on how to garden, which is a skill you'll need to have if it goes down. I got a little bit of bushcraft stuff, not much yet. I'll do more in the future. And I got videos about wild edibles, eating free from the weeds and trees. But guys, if we got a nuclear winter or something else going on, you better have some supply stored up. And I do have a special for that right now. If you go to prepwithgreg.com, you can get $100 off a 3-month supply of food that's 2,000 calories per day. Now, John, is that kind of interesting to have 2,000 calories? Is that kind of beyond the competition usually?
That's well beyond the competition. That's one of my big gripes with the preparedness. Most of the preparedness community is a brotherhood, and everyone is tight knit. But my big gripe is most of the long-term food companies only give you about 800 calories a day, which is a starvation diet even for a kid. That's probably one of the biggest things I see with clients is that they buy one of these 1-year food plans for their family, realizing they only have 3 or 4,000 calories or 3 or 4 months worth of actual food. So 2,000 calories a day is really good.
Yeah, so check it out. Go to prepwithgreg.com. That's a great deal, and it'll get you through. You get 6 of those buckets for that deal, or you can buy a 1-month supply, which is 2 of the buckets. And buckets are very useful after the fact too, and they're easy to handle and easy to move. You can put these in your caches or wherever because they're still tight. It makes a nice prep in, bug out way to store your food in the long term. Anyway, enough said for that. We're going to start just some general discussion about the threats. I've got a lot of people coming in the room here right now, and so I might throw out some of their questions to y'all, and then we got some charts that we can flip through too. And so I want to let, since we just had John talking, we'll flip back to Ken. Ken, what do you see as the biggest threats right now to our power grid?
Well, the overarching, Damocles sword that we have hanging over this all the time is a geomagnetic disturbance, massive, huge plasmatic event coming from the sun that can happen anytime, as it did in 1859 and any other, a couple of other times that we've had such a significant event. And again, happen at any time. The sun is in a new 11-year cycle now, and it's one of the cases that it exemplifies very, very perfectly what John Hollerman's mantra is about plan for the worst, hope for the best, and let God do the rest. Well, if we get hit with a plasmatic event like that, we'll go back to 1859 or earlier without the knowledge about how to survive and sustain our way of life and so on, without an adequate electric grid, which is the pulse of our world. The next is a combination of cyber, which is part of the electromagnetic threat also, and what I consider nuclear, the nuclear high altitude nuclear burst, which I believe is very, very possible, especially with enemy nations such as China, Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and of course other ancillary entities such as the ISIS and Al Qaeda and the cartels and the criminal elements and so on. And you can read about that in the news. Most of the people listening on this right now and visualizing it right now are very much aware, undoubtedly, about the world situation, which we are and not at parity with some of those nations right now, especially militarily. We'll go through them. I think my plan was just to go through some of the slides, but I think it's just better off to transition over to John. John, what do you consider is the most up-jumping snake that we have to worry about?
So there's always I always got this question is like, what's the realistic threat? So, I mean, you mentioned solar flare. We're entering a solar maximum right now. The Earth's been quiet for a long time. It's just a matter of time. NASA says, I think 12% a decade. Actually, they doubled that recently with a new study, but that's always a risk. You have factors you can't control. You've got the cyber threat, which I'd like to discuss here in a minute. Obviously, you've got the EMP threat that we've discussed at length. I discussed it with Greg when I was on last time. And then you've also got the physical threat, which is the lesser threat. And tied in with the cyber is you have quantum computing. So quantum computing is the frontier of what's coming next. Russia, China, America, we're all in this Manhattan Project speed race to find out who's going to get the first fully functioning quantum computer. And it's been a little scary because things have gone dark for many years. All these countries everybody was bragging about what they could do and what they could do. And their quantum computer is now 46 qubits, and this one's now 60 qubits. And they were ramping, and everyone's getting faster quantum computers. And then all of a sudden it went dark like a year and a half ago, mostly dark. I mean, you still hear some things, but I'd rather hear what's going on than things go dark, because I mean, the experts will tell you we're about 5 years out from having quantum computers. You've probably seen it in the news. China is gobbling up data at a rapid race. It's encrypted data and they can't do anything with it. But once they get that, quantum computer up and running, they'll be able to crack any data in the world. So that's a threat. Obviously, a quantum computer tied in with AI could defeat any of our security systems and take down our electric grid. But right now, to be honest with you, I'm really watching this Russia situation really close. A little known article, I should say little known articles in the New York Times, but a little known subject that nobody's really talking about. Even people in the cybersecurity industry are talking about. Right now, we have just recently sent some cyber warfare guys from the U.S. to Ukraine to help Ukraine. Britain has too. So New York Times, obviously, they have inside information and they get to talk to experts, and we can discuss how much experts they are. But the word on the street is that we sent a team of cyber guys to Ukraine to help bolster their defenses. Now, here's the concern with that. Russia is going to invade Ukraine at some point. You can mark it on your calendar. I'm not sure exactly what day, but they will go into Ukraine. It is no secret. Everybody knows when Russia goes into Ukraine, the first thing they're going to do is take down their electric grid. Nobody even questions this. The future of warfare is in the electromagnetic spectrum. So Russia built Ukraine's electric grid. Ukraine's electric grid is held together with Russian parts. Russia's already taken down Ukraine's electric grid twice in the past as a warning. So they will take down Ukraine's electric grid as a first strike. That is really, really concerning to me, because basically what you're going to have happen is Ukraine has no chance to stop Russia. If Russia decides to invade, they have no chance. So I believe that what they will likely do is Ukraine will go after Russia through cyber. I think there's a good chance they may go after Moscow or some other big city in Russia and take down a major city's electric grid. Now, here's the thing. If we have US cyber, if we have a whole team of our best cyber warfare guys over there, so does Britain, how hard is it for Putin to say, you Americans, you Britons, you guys are the ones that caused this. You guys are the ones that attacked us, and basically turn this Ukrainian cyber attack against Russia and say, hey, it was the Americans and it was the Brits. And all of a sudden now they black out New York City, or they black out Atlanta or DC. This is not far-fetched. There's another article, and I don't have it up right here in front of me, that was discussing this possibility as well. It's just something that I'm really shocked that's not really being discussed in the the circles I run. But yeah, I think that's a very real threat. I think we could see that, and the worst thing that could happen is Russia goes in, takes down Ukraine's electric grid, or Ukraine or us behind Ukraine, takes down Moscow or takes down one of their cities. They take down one of our cities. We take down one. It could escalate, right? It really could escalate. And we know that Russia has the ability to fry our electric grid through cyber, to destroy our SCADA equipment, to take down our high voltage transformers via cyber attack. So that right now is the thing that's really concerning to me. I'm watching. We're seeing Russia and China work together. They're doing military joint exercises together. Their communications on the battlefield are starting to merge some of that. We saw that in the last exercise. You've got China on the edge of Taiwan. And so, Biden said that we're not sending troops into either of these situations. I'm not saying we should, but the last thing we should have done, I'd rather send troops into Ukraine than send cyber guys, because that's a bigger threat to me than putting some special forces guys in there to help the Ukrainians train before they show up. So anyways, that's the big thing on my radar right now that I'm watching, is what's going on the Russian-Ukrainian border and with China and Taiwan. Because if that escalates, it could end up in a tit for tat. I don't think that the US and Russia are going to start sending tanks to each other's countries and fighting a ground war, but I definitely do expect a cyber war at some point in the future.
Well, man,
hopefully they won't send tanks, because we didn't fare well at Grafenwehr during the international.
No, we didn't.
So they outgunned us, and well, it's also the Germans, thank goodness. But that wasn't to be expected. That not only that, John, just add on another dimension. Remember back years ago, we had a 2.5 war scenario back when we had a much more robust military force right now than, especially in the Army, with 15 combat brigades, which is consequentially very insignificant if you come to a large conflagration. But if you had a significant event going on in the Russia Ukraine area of operations, and also concomitantly one going on possibly because there has been some collusion between Russia and communist China over in the Taiwan area, and also reactivation of hostilities and so on, or flexing of muscles within North Korea, and also Iran. Well, let's just say they're sending missiles to outer space right now, which they are. In fact, they have a couple satellites going over the United States right now. I don't know the routine, but almost very, very similar to the North Korean satellites that are the KSM-2 and KSM-3 that are rotating over the United States. My big fear is that we'll have a 2.5 or 2.25 war going on with completely extended lines of communications that are unsupportable and going on at the very same time, especially going against enemies that have directed energy weapons that can control their area because they're closer. They're closer. Their interior lines of communications are much less extensive than ours. Let's just say Taiwan alone, the defense of Taiwan is what, 5,800 miles from Honolulu? I mean, we don't have the luxury of the World War II type of logistics that we had then, according to a couple of brilliant generals that I know that are very strong logisticians.
Well, that's what I hear. I hear we don't have the tender ships and all the things that we used to have to keep our ships going, to keep our services running. It takes a lot of logistics to field an army and keep it out there and provide them what they need to do the job they need to do in Army, Navy, Air Force.
Well, that's true. Even the Army, especially the Army, I know much better because we don't have any mobile kitchen trailers anymore. We have civilians on the battlefield now. They're doing the repairs to the computers, command and control systems, the battlefield, BDOF, CPOG, they used to call it, and CPOF, computer operations on the battlefield, which I tried to ignore many times when I was a command. But we don't have that kind. We have a lot more civilians on the battlefield. We aren't training the military occupational specialties on life support, the logistics, and of course, anybody who's been in the military or in law enforcement or whatever, the difference between a click and a bang is logistics, and it is really quite true, especially if you go against two nations that'll be at parity with us, especially for air. We won't have superiority of air support, and then you have to bring other nations in, we can talk about this for a long time because you can bring Japan, Australia, France, United Kingdom, Canada. I'm not sure if that'll dissuade these enemy forces because people are saying, well, the economics of the commerce in China is about ready to implode. They're having problems and so on. But no, when you have a cornered rat, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, and
probably going to attack.
Yeah, and the one thing we need to realize is for I don't even know how long, the U.S. has been the world's superpower. We have had air control, air superiority. We've had ground superiority. We've been ahead of any other enemy nation for a long, long time. We are no longer have the best tech as far as military. For the last 20 years, we've been over there fighting in the sandbox, fighting with tanks and building aircraft carriers, building and China and Russia have been building technology, military technology that far surpasses ours. I mean, just that hypersonic glide rocket that China launched here, what was that, a month and a half ago? Our physicists and some of the things that happened on that launch, it shed, I don't know if it was another missile off of the hypersonic glide vehicle while it was in flight. Our physicists were saying, we didn't even know this stuff was possible. Many of the things that China and Russia are coming out military technology wise, they're really far beyond us because we've been focused on conventional warfare for the last 20 years in the Middle East, and they've been focusing on modern futuristic weapons, and they've been increasing their budget to the point where it almost rivals ours at this point, military budgets. So that's really it's really concerning. And you can look back to, I think it was a past.
Hey, John, I think it's a misnomer to compare apples and oranges with who's spending how much money between us and China or us and Russia, because of several factors. For one, they get a lot more bang for their buck with the money they spend there. You can buy a lot more in China for a buck than you can buy here, and their contractors probably work a lot cheaper. And two, you kind of hit on this a little earlier, you especially Ken there, that they've got everything close at hand. All their forces, all their communication lines are short. Their logistics lines are short because they're right there in their homeland, mainly Russia and China both. Whereas we are spread across the world. An awful lot of our defense budget goes into maintaining far-flung forces. And so it's not even close in apples to apples comparison when we say, well, they spend this much, we spend this much money and they spend that much money. It don't even make sense because look what they're buying with their money. That's what you got to look at. And when you look at the number of ships that China's putting out, when you look at the kind of weapons that Russia's developing, the Poseidon silent, what do they call it? It's got another status 6 Poseidon unmanned torpedo, which is really a nuclear powered drone submarine that could carry the Sir Bomber with 100 megatons. So when you look at stuff like that, there's Sarmat missile. When you look at all these various and sundry hypersonic missiles, and every time we've got to test one lately, it's went poof. And a lot of
that's exactly right. Yep.
A lot of that those do with our contracting. Our contractors have got fat and lazy. In my, I work in the contracting world, and a lot of these contracting companies have got more bureaucracy than our own federal government these days. I've really noticed that. I've been kind of shocked by how much bureaucracy I've seen in them. So they aren't lean and mean like they used to be. And these other countries still have lean and mean companies. They got lean and mean forces and are just outproducing us in these areas. And that's something to be concerned with. We got to reconsider how we contract with our defense establishment. We got a lot of things that we need to take a hard look at real fast because Ken, you're right. We might be facing two major. You said 2.5 war or 2.25. Think about it. We might be facing Russia and China plus Iran and North Korea. I mean, once one moves, it'd be to all their advantages to move at the same time if that's what they're disposition to do. So how do we handle that? What do we do?
Well, we can always have General Milley call the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in China and have a friendly conversation, which he's done before and probably a few times, but I won't go there.
Oh Lord, Milli Vanilli. He might be able to lip sync too. Him and our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. I don't know. This whole idea of having such a woke military is scary. That the priorities are so far off. Where's the priorities on war fighting? Where's the priorities on winning? Where's the priorities on having what we need to stay on top as a nation? I believe
China and Russia are going the opposite direction. China and Russia are bolstering. I don't know if there's a bunch of stories, and I linked to them here a while back with my followers. They're making it illegal to have effeminate men on TV. They're like really pushing this rah gung ho prepare for war type mentality in China right now. Russia's doing the same. Putin came out here the other day and he spoke against this whole kind of progressive wokeness that's happening around the globe, and we're 1,000 miles per hour full speed ahead as much as we can put in our military. And if the purging of the top brass during the Obama administration didn't damage us bad enough over the 8 years of the Obama administration, so now we have a whole lot of liberals at the top brass level in the military. Now with what we just did, getting rid of all these, basically anybody that's a conservative that's not going to get the vaccine, we're getting some of our most conservative members are just either retiring, they're leaving, and we're going to have a woke military here real soon.
That's scary because, like you said, what really strikes me odd, the woke people, the guys that want to be federal, they're the guys that are promoting communism in this country. But when you go to communist countries, they don't want nothing to do with that. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, that's just the way it is. It's the way it's been. It's always been like that. They use people like that to help them get in power. But then that's the first people they purge is the people put them in power. The Nazis did the same thing with the brown shirts and some of the people that put them in power. They turned around and purged them as soon as, they use these people that, haven't found a way to fit in, I guess, or something to their advantage. And then they purge them. So a lot of people got grandiose fantasies about this future and the things they're promoting, but they're really promoting their own demise. They don't realize that they're going to be the last priority. They need to wake up and smell the coffee. I'm drinking some coffee right now, and I got a cup of tea over here too, by the way.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make any political statements either. Maybe I used some trigger words there when I was speaking, but the point of the matter is China and Russia are doubling down on, I'm trying not to use any trigger words here. They're doubling down on their strong, men in their forces. And, there's nothing, I'm not saying women shouldn't be in the military. I'm just saying that the direction our military is going, as far as the softness of it, the softness of basic training, it's not, I don't know. I have very serious concerns about our military in the future and where it's headed compared to Russia and China. I mean, they're really cranking out some new types of training that we're not doing. So.
Yeah, well, when I was in basic training, the drill sergeant would haul off and knock you down if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, now you raise the stress card if they do that. No.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I got knocked once, but I had my plans because I knew when we was on bivouac, if they would sneak around and try to take the M16s, and you had every right in the world to defend it. And I was just begging, please, drill sergeant, come in my tent and try to take my M16. I had a root ball. I made a club out of root ball, and I was wanting to clobber the heck out of one of them and have the excuse to do it. I was just begging, please come in my tent. They never showed up.
Now, Greg, did you have the opportunities to, or will you have the opportunity to send whomever is watching the slide, the death by PowerPoint slides that we have put together?
Yeah, let me do that because I got this link from John in my email.
Okay.
Let me share that in the chat room, guys. We got some slides, and you can all this downloads so fast, it's unbelievable. I just clicked on this and hit the download, and I got these slides. So you can all watch along with us from your own computer.
Yeah, the key thing is to be able to, like John set it up beautifully, much better than I did, that you can see the talking dog portion, the notes section, which is much more critical. And I can just run through a few of them if and John can add whatever one the slides pretty well too, John. I just have some ones right now just for the essence of time, encouraging people to look over these slides, and with the whole thrust is that we have to. John has been at this for a long time. You've been at this for a long time, Greg. I've been down twice to Alabama. Oh, are you there? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here. I've just shared the presentation.
Oh,
and I
just give you the number and you'll click on it, right?
Right. I put this in the chat room so everybody can follow along on your own computer. You can see the chat notes, which I've hidden here. They're all in here, all the text that goes with these slides. So we can all go through this together in one big
okay.
Here.
That sounds great. Just but the whole idea, if they're listening, the whole idea of this presentation that we put together is to, I guess it's not a very good to you after January 6th. It's not a good use the word incite, but that want to incite people to some kind of movement, because absolutely nothing has been done by the federal government or your state representatives and Senate to simplistically say harden / protect the electric grid, either the bulk power system or the distribution system that brings it into your home and your businesses. Absolutely nothing has been done since the 2004, 2008, and 2017 EMP Commission report that was convened by Congress. Everyone knows the issues. Everyone knows the issues. I can go into a great tirade, and so could John, and so could you, Greg, about who's at fault, but it's hard to find out who's at fault because no one's accepting responsibility for this. We have certainly no HMFIC, head military figure in charge, trying to figure all this out, and certainly nobody on the civilian side. I'm not even going into any greater depth because it's discussed in the slides. And the whole idea of all of these slides, which we initially tried to produce as a book, but then I realized that nobody reads books anymore, especially the target audience we want to reach, people that have busy lives and so on. They'll be watching the Prime Channel and Netflix and so on. We wanted to visualize it, to actually have a video, not a video, but a PowerPoint slide and a talking dog under there to give some verbiage about supporting the slide. So if you bear with me, I'll go, are you set, Greg? I'll go through the slide. Number one would be good. I'll talk on that for just a moment.
We're on one right now.
Yeah, number one is that This is Winston Churchill's an old timer, but he's very, very astute. He just talks about basically his short paragraph right there that you can read. Want of foresight, unwillingness to act when action would be simple and effective, as it is right now. Lack of clear thinking, confusion of counsel until the emergency comes, until self-preservation strikes its jarring gong. These are the features which constitute the endless repetition of history. Next one. Next one is, bear with me, slide 5.
Slide 5.
Yeah.
All right, we're on slide 5.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line up front. I usually start off, anybody starts off most military presentations with the bluff. And you can read that for yourself.
And it kind of goes without saying, if you've been following this stuff,
yeah,
we're not prepared.
It boils down to we have a failure to imagine, and we still do. People can't imagine going into the supermarket and not having, pulling out the half gallon of milk and having another one slide down, or turning your living room light on and the switch not going on unless you think there's a problem, called the electrician. Someday that may very well happen. And here's the line I really wanted to put in there, the fifth one down. While we so far have the best offensive military in the world, and it is quite good yet, even though it's just, anyway, I won't go there. We have the worst defense of our own homeland at the catastrophic level.
Amen.
Slide 6, please.
Slide 6. Hey, Ken, to kind of go along with what you're saying up here, you had the opportunity to see what it's like when you didn't have all that stuff, because you were in, was it Bosnia or Herzegovina, when you walked in the woods, and it was really strange. You said it was really quiet. Tell us about what that was.
John knows this very well too. John knows the Burko Sergovecs of the world, that he could discuss that. But I only remember one convoy. I was in there with the invasion force with General Nash. I was down there to evaluate from the Center for Army Lessons Learned for a few months, right along with the invasion force, to gather lessons learned, which nobody reads anyway. But to gather lessons learned, we're constantly relearning lessons. And at that time, I personally never saw a horse, a cow, a pig, cattle. They were all eaten. If I thought about it long enough, I would probably realize I probably didn't see any squirrels either. But there certainly were no chickens around. But everything was eaten because people were trying to survive, as Jonathan knows very, very well. People were doing unspeakable things to each other in these villages that happened to be without power for what, several to 11 months, John? Long time.
Yeah. This is the thing that the American people and the people that are logged in watching this, most of them are probably here from the States. You live in the richest country in the world. We live in, people go through hard times here, but in perspective to the rest of the world, it's nothing. And to take this country, remove the electric grid for an extended period of time, we're talking many months, probably years. Grocery stores are cleaned out in 3 days. No interstate trucking, no banking, no radio, no TV. Nobody knows what's going on. No heat, no AC. All the septic systems around the big cities break, and sewer starts backing up into your house. You have no way to stop it. Your home becomes unlivable. Nothing to eat. 330 million people. It is fundamentally impossible to feed 330 million people across this landmass without electricity. So you're going to have mass starvation on a biblical scale that's never before been seen in this country. And people think that the government's going to step in and save the day, or General will tell you. We were both at the Electromagnetic Defense Task Force down at the Mabee Wargaming Center here a year and a half ago. There is no plan. There's no government plan. There's no military plan. The military is 99% reliant on the civilian electric grid. They have reports to DOD reports to Congress telling them if we lose the civilian electric grid, we will not be able to respond. They've got between 24 and 48 hours of backup diesel. When we were down at that, one of the areas I'm always thinking about is starvation of food. And, I'm asking all the military bases today, their food comes on the base every 2 days, just like a grocery store. The chow halls are all civilian contracted. The grocery store, the BX on the base, it gets food shipments every single day. They are in the exact same boat as the American people. There's no plan of action. So when the EMP, the solar flare, whatever pops off, that military colonel, whatever he is that's running that base, the general that's in charge of that base. There's no file that he can pull out and say, oh, this is how we respond to a total blackout situation. There's no, the phones don't work. They don't have, there's no microsats, there's no secret communications for that general to even call the Pentagon and say, hey, what do we do? What's the plan? There's no plan. There's zero planning on this from the government or the military level. So when this happens, you're going to see starvation. And that's the thing that people just don't understand, the atrocities that are going to be committed. I mean, everybody, and even in the prepper community, they're all like, oh, I'm going to work together with my neighbor, this or that. Yeah, that'll work for a week or two. That'll work for a week or two until his kid is starving to death on the couch and you've got an extra can of peaches that he finds out that you have. These little agreements you're going to make on your block, and that's assuming that the block across the street from you doesn't have more guns and, better squared away people than you do. It's going to be a horrific situation. And Ken was just talking about his time in Bosnia. I've heard all kinds of people, oh, I'm going to move out to the national forest and hunt. There's not going to be a bird left in the forest, let alone a deer or a groundhog. Anything with fur is going to be dead because that's the only food source. It's going to get really, really ugly. And that's the thing that I sound like a broken record. I've been on your show before, Greg. I keep trying to hound this. People just don't get it. They don't get what's coming. They don't understand. They look at this as, any other scenario. The absolute worst thing that could happen to this country is the long-term loss of the electric grid. Everything stops. Everything ceases to exist. It's going to get ugly. So, on these PowerPoints, it's very important if you're watching this, make sure you download these PowerPoints. There's 99 pages here that Ken Chrosniak has spent a long time putting together. And if you haven't watched Ken on one of Greg's previous shows, I want to give you his qualifications here real quick. So Brigadier General Ken Chrosniak, who's the other guy on the line here, retired now, has 37 years of combined military experience. He served in Vietnam, Bosnia, Kuwait, Iraq. He served 2 years on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where he assisted in writing the National Military Strategic Plan for the War on Terror. He served in Baghdad, Iraq as the Chief of Staff of Strategy Plans and Assessments Office. He spent 2 years as the Chief of Staff of Army Asymmetrical Warfare Office in the Pentagon, and he is presently an instructor for Strategic Leadership's Mission Command and Cyber Warfare Division. So I always tell people, when I hear people saying this or that, what are their qualifications to say it? So this 99 pages of information and notes for you to take a look at, you're getting it from the horse's mouth. You're getting it from a guy that has spent the last 10 years with Impact America, been to all the conferences. I met him a few years back here. He's, you're basically taking it from the horse's mouth, and you need to listen to what he has to say. So I'm sorry.
No, and John, also you were right there on the front line. You were right down there at the tactical level, and even further down. You looked at these soldiers, pilots, and teaching your survival training, bringing them out for weeks, and you saw just how the transformation can be, where they'll reach the point of desperation they'll reach the point of desperation after going through their survival, evasion, and resistance and escape scenarios that I couldn't go through, even as a younger man. Undoubtedly, it's a special person when you get the special operators and the pilots and going through that. You've seen them and how they transform themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that's one of the things that a lot of people that read my books or invite me to speak or something, that's one of the things they really look at. It's like, oh, you're a SEER instructor. It's about, survival and learn how to build shelters and fires and navigation and evasion and all the cool stuff at SEER school that people focus on. My biggest takeaway from SEER school that has to do with this stuff is taking some of the top trained pilots that we work with special operations guys from time to time, came through, people from alphabet agencies. And I didn't have a single class of students that I carried that I didn't have a full grown man break down, absolutely bawling at some point in the trip. To watch, you take people out in the field, you take away their food, you take away their sleep, put them in stressful situations, and to just watch them melt over the course of a 6-day training class, that they know is going to end. They know when the date it's going to end on. They know they're going to get food later. So in this type of scenario, in a grid down event, when there's no radios, no TV, no internet, no banking, no nothing, you have no idea what's going on. Well, most of the people in the country are going to have no idea what's going on. And that utter desperation, there's no end in sight. They don't know when this thing's going to end. That is going to make people react in ways that they don't even know. So another thing to take a look at is a book called The Minnesota Starvation Experiment. I won't get in depth on it, but it was back in the war during World War II. Conscientious objectors that didn't want to fight volunteered to be part of this starvation experiment. And to put it in perspective, they were limited to 1,500 calories a day, and it goes through the whole process how they lost all kinds of weight, and they half starved these guys to death. And they broke down. Some of the guys were cutting themselves, self-harm. And these were people that had doctors pouring over them. They knew their family was safe. They knew nobody was coming to kill them. So the psychology of human desperation, starvation, living in a world like that is something that there's no manual you can pick up really and read it from a psychology point of view. It's the closest I would say would be Philip Zimbardo. He's world-renowned psychologist of the Stanford Prison Experiments from Stanford University. He wrote a book called The Lucifer Effect, and it's basically how good people can do evil. And his study was like how a good old boy from the farm country in Oklahoma can go over to Vietnam and do some horrible things to people, and then come home to America and work a 9-to-5 job, stocking groceries. He did a lot of study on the Nazis and some of the atrocities, the things that happened in Germany that the regular people went along with. So a lot of the preparedness community, a lot of the kind of survivalist community really focuses on cooperation. You need cooperation. You need mutual assurance groups. I'm not saying any of that, but you need to have a realistic understanding that you can't trust people that don't have food. Right. So you can make all the best agreements with your buddies on the block, and you might have 4 months of food in your basement. They talked about it a whole lot beforehand, but they never put any food in their basement. Guess whose food they're eating? And that's there's going to be a lot more people. It's just, you need to look at a lot of these things rationally and step out of your normalcy bias of living in a world that makes sense, that's sane. You have conversations with people, they go the way you expect. They don't, like, someone doesn't step out behind you and cut your throat, to see what's in the backpack you're carrying. Everything makes sense in the world today. And we try and take that world into preparedness, and put our life experience today and move it over here into this environment. You got to be able to completely take yourself out of the world today. And it's real important if you want to do that. Read Selko Begovich's books, The Dark Secrets of SHTF Survival. Read history. Read The Rape of Nanking. Read the books of the atrocities that happened that the Russians did the Germans during World War II. Read the Holodomor, stories about the Holodomor, the Ukrainian Holocaust and the Russian starvation. Read the stories about when Mao starved, what was it, 100 million Chinese, and read the stories from some of these areas and take a look. There's a lot of good.
It was called the Great Leap Forward, and then he had to cap it off and dot the I's and cross the T's. He had the Cultural Revolution, which gave number 2, the 1-2 punch of that.
Yeah, so I'm just reading here. One of the comments is I don't want to bug out. Definitely bugging in if at all possible. So here's the thing, I get this a lot. The idea. Okay, so if you're talking about a financial collapse or some other type of scenario that's not radically altering life as we know it, yeah, fine, bug in. But if we have a grid down scenario where I went through the list, there's no food, no internet, no water, and we're not talking about, I need to bug in for a week or two. If it's an EMP, if it's a solar flare, the first transformers, the high voltage transformers that get fried in this country, they take 12 to 18 months to build. The first one's not arriving to our shores for 12 months. 98% of the country is not going to have power for 12 months. Okay. You're not bugging in for 12 months. So first of all, I don't know where you live. You could live out in rural country, but if you live in the suburbs, yeah, go ahead.
How do you order them when you don't have an internet, when you don't have money, when the fuel to transport them isn't there for the machinery And how do you install them when they get here a year or two late, a year or a year and a half later, when look at our society today, how our supply chains have been disrupted for minor little things. Now imagine if 9 out of 10 people die, as pointed out by the EMP Congressional Task Force in the year after the grid's down. Suddenly a year later, you're getting these things in. Who's going to assemble them? Who's going to put them in? And what are you going to do that with?
Yeah.
The Humpty Dumpty's falling off the wall. And guys, how do you put it back together again is my question. I don't see it. I don't see the grid coming back anything like we know it in our lifetimes if we let this happen. If we allow this thing to come apart like that, we're in grave trouble.
If you look at the slides as you go ahead further, we won't go through them all right now, but that's discussed. It's discussed maybe at the epidermal level, but the significant points that were mentioned already were brought up during what we call the center of gravity, which is the electricity that'll take down our nation, and the supporting single points of failure that support that center of gravity, like fuel, people, time, communications, transportation. And that's discussed on slides 50 and a little bit further on in the but everything that Jonathan is saying right now revolves around 3 words. Other than his comfy level that he talked about before and getting along with the normal that we have now, is failure to imagine. If you go over quickly to slide 7, Greg.
All right, here we are, slide 7.
It talks about the Aniyoshi over in the prefecture, the tsunami in Fukushima in Japan. The next slide, please. Were they warned? Yeah, they were warned, all right, because just read that. There's about 300 of these stone markers, about 4 foot by, some of them I think are almost 10 foot. The water came within just a few meters of those stone markers. They said, don't build anything beyond this point going east, because the great tsunami. So they happened before. They built a damn nuclear power plant in a huge village. So what they were warned. And if you go quickly to slide 10, look at Hawaii back in January in 2018, when some guys had space and timing at the emergency center, some clown made a mistake, whatever. But look at the turmoil that he caused. People didn't know what to do. We had nuclear missiles coming in from North Korea, presumably North Korea, because it was the news at the time. They didn't know what to do. They were putting their kids down in the storm drains. They had no idea. They had no idea what to do. They were never informed about what to do by any type of government. And very quickly over to, I'm trying to go through these. If you go to slide 14, there's differing levels of catastrophe, or not catastrophe, but events, I call them. There's design-based events that we're very good at. The FEMA, the Cajun Navy, the military, they're very, very good at the events like disasters and even on the number of catastrophic events. Katrina, it was bad. It was really bad if you were in a gym in New Orleans too. It was a tragedy probably. But when you get into the real cataclysmic and the tragedy events of which there's no reversal, like nuclear power plants, which have absolutely no redundancy to them, they are going to, you don't even want to talk about that stuff. Go to slide, if you can, 17, please. That encompasses pretty well what Jonathan was talking about.
There it is.
How dependent the military. This is back in 2008 from the EMP Commission that nobody's been listening to. You'll see the military is completely subsumed in this also. Everything, the military is 99%, like right, yeah, both civilian and military capabilities depend on these infrastructures. And there will be no defense industrial base. It's going to be very, very tenuous at best. And slide 21, please. Now I'll go through these quickly. That's the bulk electric system on the upper left, and the distribution systems on the lower one. It's those extra high voltage transformers that need support from E1, E2, E3, which I'm not going to go into now. It goes into some detail on the remaining slides and so on. But that's pretty well the structure. And
they're in these substations right here. This is what he's talking about, guys.
Yeah, the substations, which are yeah. And if you go to slide, the threats, go to slide 28, please. Now go through these with just one slide each. No, excuse me, slide 29, please. nuclear. It talks about that. I've got about 4 or 5 slides on that because some elements of a nuclear detonation above the Earth are much more devastating than even a GMD. All depends on where you're located. I remember teaching at the Army War College, and my fellow instructors would say, "Oh, you're Chicken Little," and you're anyway. This one woman, a 2-star general who I knew from from NSA, National Security Administration, because I was there for some time with her. She was on her retirement tour, and she came through a couple months before she retired, and she was giving a lecture on cyber warfare to the students. But apparently their families were invited, the wives were there and the husbands, and we had foreign students there too, even from Russia and Pakistan. And she couldn't get into very much depth that she could have, but she talked right on the periphery. And I caught the very end of the discussion after about an hour and a half, and I heard this one last question of a gentleman in the back. He stood up and he said, "Ma'am, what keeps you awake at night?" And immediately she said, "A HEMP, a high altitude nuclear burst over the center part of Kansas that will take out electronics and the electric grid across the nation. What is she? And we're screwed." That's her exact words. "We're screwed." And then she says she's teaching her daughter how to read a 1 over 50,000 G a map using a lensatic compass. You know, she's teaching survival to her children. This is a 2-star Army general who's now retired. And I won't say her name because she didn't give permission to say her name. So I didn't. And if you go to slide, I try to have these picked out. And then you have slide 41 quickly, please.
Hang on. There you go.
That discusses something that I know Jonathan works real well, a physical attack. A physical attack is, well, I consider it practically a kinetic attack too, because a kinetic attack, of course, but it's a different type of cyber attack, I call it, because I consider cyber warfare a physical attack because it'll turn on that switch that on your wall. It'll actually move that switch. So I consider that a physical attack. But I think I'm all alone on that. But a bunch of pretty smart guys, probably special operators from somewhere. These just weren't disgruntled workers, as the FBI agent Lightfoot told me when I was in San Francisco when we were discussing this. This was well planned. One of the guys screwed up by leaving a few shells, but it didn't really matter anyway. They got in, they cut the wires at the base or at the wall, which means they knew what they were doing. These weren't disgruntled workers. So you also have slide 43, please.
There you go.
And that's the one I talked about before. And you can read that on the slide, but if you go to 44 right away, Greg.
All right.
That pretty well tells what it is. We've had these before, and it's going to come again. People say, "Well, why worry about that?" And I say, "Well, hey, do you have homeowners insurance?" Well, yeah, who doesn't have homeowners and car insurance? Well, have you had a house fire yet? Have you had an accident? Well, no. Well, why don't you cancel the insurance then? What the hell do you need insurance for? If you're not, well, of course you don't cancel it. This is insurance. And that actually came from Congressman Roscoe Bartlett, one of the fathers of trying to kick some sense into the government. And the overriding one, if you go back to channel slide 40, I'll go over that this is written by Dr. George Baker, who used to head of the brilliant man is a professor emeritus in physics. And that pretty well says it all. I put the little bombs in there, the grenades.
I do that on charts. I do that on charts too.
Indefinite. And that's just a high altitude nuclear burst in the solar. It doesn't talk about cyber or anything else, but cyber is just as devastating. Very quickly over to slide 50, please.
All right.
There's the real thing, the cascading effects. The Iraqis, the Iranians, the Islamic world considers WMD in one of their fatwa, not a fatwa, but their, I forgot what the word was in the aberration from the Quran, Siri. They say, well, WMD, weapons of mass destruction, really doesn't kill people. Well, it doesn't initially. These won't kill people initially, but over time, like Jonathan and Greg said, and as you read through the charts, millions and millions will die. I remember briefing then President-elect he was a candidate then, Donald Trump, back in March of 2016. And he said, is it true that we really will lose 90% of the population in the first year? And I said, yes, sir, but 90, okay, so you only lose 10%. That's 30 some million, 3.2 million at that time. I said, no, this is a devastating effect because it's cascading, because it affects everybody else in here. And by the way, Dr. George Baker had the best term for this. Okay, 90% of the population will die, and you don't want to be around the other 10%. So if you go to slide 51 quickly, I always say quickly because I'm trying not to waste your time. Here is what Jonathan was talking about, the center of gravity. Like the center of gravity in World War II, to defeat the Germans was the oil and ball-bearing plants in Ploesti and so on. We bombed the daylights out of them. We tried to reduce their productivity for warfare. But as fuel, you'll have degraded, destroyed refinery. You'll have no fuel. Communications. I'll show you some slides from FEMA director. I forgot his name. He actually made the slides up. You'll have no military satellite communications, no commercial satellite communications, internet, national incident management systems that we have firefighters have. And FirstNet sure as hell is not going to work. People won't be there. They'll be home with their family.
Yeah, the point he's saying is nobody's coming. So that's what most people listening, they've gotten used to Katrina and Hurricane Sandy. We see all these catastrophes in Puerto Rico, and somebody always comes to help you. In this scenario, ain't nobody coming to help you. Go ahead, General.
Right. And very good, thanks. And time is of the essence. We have a thing in the military, most of you know that the golden hour. Well, it's really not an hour, not with the wounds, maybe a half an hour. You have a golden hour. You'll have maybe 3 to 4 weeks. I actually changed that to about 2 to 3 weeks at the most, with no comms, the panic and so on, a golden time to establish a sense of hope, recovery. With the vital risk factor, it supports all of these. Like Jonathan has said, food. Quickly over to slide 57. Pardon my saying quickly. I'm just trying to.
Right, I guess you got to scroll down to get to it.
Yeah. Chris Fugate wrote these. He actually briefed this, and I got this from somebody at DHS who's still working there, who was ordered to destroy them. But I show them to everybody. I said, I don't give it. I show it to everybody. But you can see at the plain old telephone system, cell towers, for the G5 level, there's different degrees of geomagnetic storms, the plasmatic events, whatever you want to call them. And after about immediately, they'll start the geosynchronous orbits, the mid-Earth orbits, and low Earth orbits, satellites, iridium, and so on. They'll start degrading. Slide 59, please.
59.
So on just real quick, while you change the slides on that subject, I get a lot of questions about sat phones. In the case of an EMP or even a very severe solar flare, you're likely not going to have sat phones. So don't rely on sat phones for communication to EMP or solar flare. Go ahead.
Right. And a lot of times it depends on the latitude, the geomagnetic, the metallurgical underneath the earth and so on, whether it's sedentary rock or granite and so on. That's too much. I get a headache thinking about it. But here's when the shit is the fan, and it's after 30 days. I don't see anything other than red here. It ain't good. Everything will stop, even unless, if you're not a ham radio operator, marry one as quickly as you possibly can. Man or woman, go ahead and marry them anyway, because they're going to be worth their weight in gold, as long as they have food to feed them and water and maybe some class 9 or some repair parts. Go ahead and make friends real fast. And the last, Route 60, Route 66. He was a past director of FEMA, Craig Fugate, who I knew. And there's what Greg has said. But you still have to be able to produce. It takes 6 months to move those things and to logistically plan for them. You have to move bridges and how many railroads can support them right now going out to Stump Jump County, West Virginia, someplace, because they made it into a jogging trail now. It'll take 4 to
that exactly what Greg was saying there was that, like, the first transformers aren't going to arrive on our coast for 8, 10, 12 months. Where's the lineman at? Where are the bridge repair guys? Where is this, 450 tired trailer that can haul this thing? How are you going to get it? It's just, you can't reach anybody. There's no cell phones. There's no, how's this even going to get from the coast to where it needs to go? If you're down to 10% of people.
Slide 62 will show that somewhat, I think, John.
Yeah.
Here's what they are. And it's, those are called schnabel cars on the railroad. And by the way, that in the lower left-hand corner, that transformer actually went down into that water.
I see this one got dropped over here.
Well, that was a different one. And
this is just the one on the left and the one on the right staying on the side.
Yeah, that went right over, and it was. I got a picture of that too, but I couldn't find it. I think they probably did. But you need people. The upper right-hand corner. You need people to do that kind of stuff. Look at that. It's going over a highway. That's probably about a 500 some kV transformer. And look at, you have to move stuff. You need people for that, and they're going to be home with their families. But let me just do a few more. The most important one I want to show you right now.
All the wheels on that snaffle trailer there. And you got another rig over here assisting with it on the adjacent bridge. It looks like the track.
Oh yeah, and the rails are
even in the best of times, it takes a lot of them. I saw take 2 to 3 months to get it from port to the final resting place, because I mean they have to inspect every road, every bridge. It takes entire teams of people to get these things around the country. So, yep.
We're gonna have plenty of help, just like you do today with a labor shortage, right? Especially after
even the rail, there's a thing called a schnabel car. I think there's maybe 4 still operating. I had heard only 2 are in the entire United States. So that's and how many rail can actually build? But if you go to slide 71, I think that's the one I was really aiming for now, is just to show the military response. Just take a moment and read that. And Jonathan mentioned this already. There's no planned scenarios of exercise at this level. For the past 2 years, the National Defense Authorization Act, which the federal agencies are blowing off anyway, FEMA was ordered to do a nationwide EMP and GMD tabletop exercise, or an exercise for the survivability of the nation. They blew it off the first year, they blew it off the second year, and it was supposed to have been done December last year. They're not doing it. Yeah, I won't go there anymore. Now, the next slide 72, please, Greg. Just read through this. You won't have enough military. You're going to have to call in I call them general purpose forces. These aren't 18th Airborne and all those. Have they been trained for truly cataclysmic, volatile, VUCA, we call it, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment? Like taking your convoy down through the green zone in Baghdad. It sucks. But here, responders, just read through this. And neither does local volunteer fire companies and so on, or professional fire companies, law enforcement, or EMS. I know I'm the vice president of the ambulance company here. Our people aren't trained. They think I'm crazy. But we have no plans or scenarios. But look at that, involving several, if not all 10 FEMA regions at the same time, responsible for operations in vast urban, suburban, and rural areas. Urban is no problem. They're all going to die quickly anyway. Over multiple jurisdictions for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, I tell everybody to get out of the cities. I just don't.
Don't
will be cannibals.
Maybe or raise a real big garden out in Grand, whatever, while trying to maneuver within an intense humanitarian disaster environment. Next slide, please. Right.
Yeah.
With overwhelming needs for mass care, shelter, graze registration, sanitation, law enforcement, drinkable water, food, and medical assistance demands, all while threatened by severe civil conflict. You're going to have people out there that are military trained and don't get in their way. No. And they'll take whatever you have. Severely degraded comms, non-existent. Okay. Degraded no situational awareness. The GPS won't work. Or position, navigation, and timing, which I'm not going to go into that. Your exact location and other. We need PNT. With loss of, there'll be no air traffic control, even for units coming back from overseas. accepting what we call joint reception station, staging it on movement and integration. We won't be able to accept any more troops coming in the area to help. Not that there'll be any. Highways congested and blocked, patrolled by well-armed marauders. I think you get the picture. I was a chemical officer detailed with a nuclear artillery unit, a nuclear deliverable, half a kiloton, small, not that devastating of a nuclear round. But if you've ever seen a nuclear power plant, it's called an exothermic zirconium fire, and you can't put them out. So it's called the China syndrome, which we almost experienced here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is maybe 35 miles from my house, downwind, thank God.
Well, that's something I talk about a lot of times. A lot of people don't realize that these fuel rods, that zircaloy alloy, burns on contact with air when it's hot, as they are. And I've had a guy at the power plant argue with me, but I got the Sandia National Laboratory test results that proves it, and multiple reports and tests. So it's a fact. Those things will burn on contact with air. And we're not just talking about the fuel rods inside the plant, ladies and gentlemen. Mostly there's a whole mess of fuel rods that's outside the containment building and what they call the cooling pools. And that's the ones I worry about most because they're not inside the containment building. There's so much material in there now, it's mind-boggling. And if that stuff goes up in smoke, we're in grave trouble.
And Jonathan, if you can just, you've seen this before. I hate to jog your memory that quickly. Slide 84, please, Greg. Just getting I call it. I think I lifted this. We don't call it plagiarism at the Army War College. We just call it lifting good ideas. And I think I sort of paraphrase it, John, but just go contact. The whole idea is contact your local fire company, your fire chief, your police, your mayor, or whatever, and say, what are you doing to protect us from this? The grid going down. They'll have, you talk about EMP, they're going to think that's part of Chinese food, along with MSG and whatever, sodium. And then say, just put together a little mental exercise that I think I took some of this verbiage from yours, John. Just tell them, even if you're talking to them, just say, close your eyes right now. What are you going to do? Try to determine what list of resources and capabilities are available to you right now. And the next slide that I like that John made up, you're going to fail miserably, and a lot of people are going to die anyway. But that's okay, because there's only a tabletop exercise or a picture in time in your mind. But what are you going to do about it? These are things you come out of your, like Jonathan called it, your comfy normalcy bias to spur you to action. And that's the whole reason for these 95 death, manslaughter by PowerPoint is that. And I think that's pretty well wraps it up. And a few other things that you can see. But here's the thing. We built, if you go to slide very, very quickly, the last one, 88, not the last slide, but that's the last one I want to show. Look what we did in World War II, along with building the Pentagon in less than a year,
Wow.
under budget and ahead of time.
Wow.
We did. And we had horses that were doing maneuvers out against, we had horse warfare, Patton. And we had to go from, and all of a sudden the Germans brought in blitzkrieg with armor and aircraft and artillery. And all of a sudden we had a real shock of recognition saying, hey, we're pretty well screwed. But the problem is we don't have a military like that anymore. We don't teach those kind of tactics at the Army War College anymore. We teach what I call pissant brigades. They're devastating. Each brigade is the same firepower, if not more, than an infantry division or a military division in World War II. They're devastating. The brigade combat teams. We got what, 15 of them? They're not going to do anything. You have to get them over in the fight to begin with. But the thing is, we don't teach our leaders anymore, other than coin operations, contingency operations. 20 years of fighting IEDs and maybe some Katyusha rockets and small arms fire, maybe some RPGs. We haven't gone against tanks, enemy aircraft, well-trained infantrymen that want to kill you and your families. We don't train on that anymore. We don't train at the division, corps, and army level anymore. But we're real good at CRT and gender studies, though. They better watch out.
Let's send Putin a bunch of these PowerPoint charts.
But look at this. It's just amazing. Now,
You're assuming he doesn't have them already.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we know darn well that they know what our weaknesses are. They know them very well, and so the Chinese. And one of the things that scares us, and a mutual friend of ours, Command Sergeant Major Mike Mabee, likes to talk about, is these Chinese systems we've got in our power grid, and how a lot of them seem to have back doors for communications back to homeland China, so they can monitor and control them. That's a scary thing. So,
well, like you said, I know Jonathan knows this already. John knows it. Like Michael Mabee said, a good Command Sergeant Major that keeps a lot of enlisted and general officers in tow, because they don't hide their thoughts at all. Believe me, they don't. Michael doesn't. He said, what, 18 or 20% of the power going in Las Vegas is through communist Chinese extra high voltage transformers. A little over 20% of the power going into Manhattan is through Chinese transformers, which, yet planning worst case situation, they have malware backdoors in them. So it's because
that was 8 months ago that particular report by Michael Davis came out, or 6 months ago. They've been rapidly, China's undercutting. Typically we buy our high voltage transformers from Germany and South Korea, and China's been undercutting them for price. And the electric utility companies, I mean, they're going to buy from the lowest bidder. And we had one of the high voltage transformers from that Chinese company that's making transformers over there, JHSP, I think it is. And they confiscated it at port, and they found a backdoor in the high voltage transformer, basically an off switch port. And so Trump, that was at the end of the Trump administration, and he put a kibosh, said no more transformers from China. Well, Biden's first day in office, and I'll give Biden credit, he just got rid of all of Trump's executive orders. So it wasn't like he targeted that specific one. I don't think he knew what was in it, but in that particular executive order, but he got rid of it. And now all of a sudden, I think if I remember correctly, just this year alone, we put, I think, over 66 high voltage transformers to certain levels in this country. They're still coming from China. From the same company, we know they're building backdoors into the high voltage transformers, and we're still putting them in there. That's the height of insanity.
And now circuit breakers also, and some other equipment too. But the whole, there's been some movement in the force right now with, we call RFI, Request for Information, from the Department of Energy and the Federal Electric Reliability Commission, saying, what can we do to it's like going back to, it's like deja vu all over again for most of us that have been in this mess for the past, like the Dr. Peter Vincent Prize for years, and other Dr. George Baker and John Catman, some brilliant minds. It's just over and over again, because it boils down. I'm watching a series on TV, my wife and I, called Murdoch Mysteries. It's just fascinating. And the one, Inspector Breckenridge keeps on saying, detective, follow the money. and that's what it is, which is the impetus for most warfare. It's not Duke Ferdinand being shot. It's somehow money was involved with that also. But it's just follow the money, and you go back to, okay, well, let's go with the cheapest producer of this extra high voltage transformers and circuit breakers and some other terminal equipment that has a backdoor in it, rather than going with a reliable manufacturers like Sri Lanka and South China, South Korea, Germany, Mexico. We can't. And when I briefed Trump at the time, he said, "Don't we make transformers here?" And I go, "Well, Mitsubishi makes a few, but they don't make the big five. We don't have the copper. We don't have the dielectric, copper, and we don't have the glass and the paper that you put. They're handmade, by the way. They're very intricate and so on." He said, "Well, we can change that." Well, he didn't have enough time. Even his executive orders were blown off on how to harden the transformers, not harden the transformers, but how to protect and secure the electric grid for the American citizens. Anyway, that's about it on the slides, Greg, because there's a lot more in that. But if you send me something on the very last slide, slide 95, that's any questions and so on, I'd be happy to get with John, and we can or send it off to anybody else we know, Dr. George Baker, Peter Vincent. Oh, there's so many billion people out there. I can get you the right answer. And don't call and ask me. Don't ask me whether your truck will start or not, because I probably won't answer that, because what, I mean, even if it does, you don't have any fuel for it. So don't let that worry you anymore. Comfort your mind.
Comfort. Okay, so this is a really good presentation, Ken. Everybody, I put the link in the chat room. I will put it in the show notes, the link to this set of presentation charts. You'll have a link to Impact America, and this gets you to John Hollerman. There are things we can do, guys, and some of this was touched on in this video already. Ken particularly said, contact your EMAs, contact your firefighters and ask them what they're going to do, how they'll plan for this. That'll have the effect of at least getting them thinking about it and planning it. But better yet, try to get them to have a prolonged overall exercise, a simulation of this, especially at the state level if possible. If you can get to the state level and talk to the state EMA director, a lot of them are open to this too. And say, hey, here's the scenario. You got a grid down. The grid's going to be down for over a year, and there's no cavalry coming from any other state to help you. What are you going to do, and how are you going to deal with it? How's this going to work out? How are you going to keep things flowing? And what are you going to do in that case? So let them simulate that. And see, that's what our good friend Hank Cooper did. Ambassador Cooper went through that with his local EMA communities there in the Carolinas. And the result is, and he's got a hit of everybody in the Carolinas have, because Duke Powers decided to start working this to get the grid hardened as a result, because they realized, oh my God, this is a lot worse than we thought it was going to be. There's a simulation plan tomorrow. FEMA is doing an EMP grid down simulation. But usually when they do those, they don't really look at it in a holistic picture of, like I just said, it's not realistic. It's usually some little thing, and they're not looking at what happens for the entire nation. And you don't have any rescue coming. What do you think about that, Ken and John? You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, Ken and I have both been to, I'm not going to name their names on here right now, but some of these conferences where they look at some of these things, and there's companies like emergency management companies that the government brings in to look at their planning for this or that. A lot of these emergency management, emergency response, they're tied to FEMA. Their background is Katrina. Which is a world of difference. If you have a localized, even if it's a very severe event like Katrina or Hurricane Sandy or Puerto Rico, you've got the full weight and ingenuity and the resources of the entire American people coming to one location to help everybody. Donations, FEMA, government help. If it's a nationwide thing, ain't nobody coming really to help you there. But it's just, go ahead, Ken. I don't want to. Go ahead.
We do have some glimmers of hope, and I used to say, it's some light at the end of the tunnel. But my usual joke is that it's a freight train coming at you. But in this case, we do have some glimmers of hope, like Greg had said about Ambassador Henry Cooper in South Carolina. We also have a wonderful exercise, actually, one that was hijacked by the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense in San Antonio, Texas, with the 11 Joint Base San Antonio military bases surrounding San Antonio City itself. They own their electric company down there, the city of San Antonio. It's whatever, locally owned or whatever. And it's one of the great electric companies that really are trying to, they're actually doing it. They're hardening and protecting their grid to E1 pulse, cyber, and GMD, global magnetic strike. And it's taking a long time. They're putting together a playbook that they're going to be able to expand and send off to other military installations and any civilian structures that want to have it. I think they're even looking into microgrids now, like nuclear microgrids, micro reactors, microgrids. But even then, that's still probably another 3 years down the road before that. It's actually maybe 2 years down the road. It's been what, 2.5, almost 3 years now, and we don't have the time anymore. We have so many balls in the air right now with, oh well, it's just like I used to use the word like a juggler in the old Ed Sullivan show up there, twirling the plates with the sticks and so on. We have too many of those with the enemy: Iran, Pakistan, South Korea, China, Russia, Venezuela. We got Iranian ships ported in Pennsylvania, and we got in Venezuela. We got China building ports in Peru right now, which has just turned communist. And they'll eventually, they own quite a bit. They own a pretty good portion of the Panama Canal too, but I won't go there. And there's just so much that can go wrong right now, and especially with an aged, archaic grid that we have. When even in Texas, 249 people died because it was the third time that they had a miserable storm there, that everything shut down. Even the coveted solar panels were frozen, were covered with snow. Even the wind tunnels were frozen because they didn't have any in the generators themselves. They're ice collecting on the wind, on the blades, plus the fluid inside the big thing up on top, whatever they call it, the generator transformer, froze. So you got to, and the people that run it, I think 3 of the ERCOT, the electric reliability people, they live in Germany. So what are you going to do? And then afterwards, when they came through a study of it, I didn't read the whole study. I just got it a couple of days ago. They ended up awarding the electric company quite a few $1 billion when the people were paying something like $5,000 for a kilowatt instead of the normal 0.1 cent for a kilowatt. I think their bill was probably adjusted, of course, but people died, and it was uncalled for.
Yeah, one of those kind of, not the EDTF. EDTF was absolutely stellar, but one of the other ones that Ken and I were both at. I remember one of the emergency management. I was talking about Katrina, Hurricane Sandy. Their experience, in other words, doesn't correlate to a nationwide grid down event. So all their experience and all their planning, and they have these big funds, and they're supported, and the government pays them to write these plans and everything. I remember picking up one of these like response plans, and the very first step was to activate call roster for this emergency management response group. And I was just like, you didn't even get past step 1. None of the cell phones work. The landlines don't work. The call roster is probably on some secretary's computer. You didn't even get past step 1. So the first step was activate call roster. How? Right? Yeah. And so like that was the first step. And that I'm not going to go down through all the different steps and how they're going to do this and do that and do this and do that. It was just like every single one of them. I could drive a Mack truck through the holes in this planning. So my point is you hear stories of DHF is looking at a plan, FEMA's looking at a plan. They get together and they get some bureaucrats there, and some of these top dog emergency planners from the government, and their suits, and they've never been, they've been down and dirty in these localized events, but they have a huge failure to imaginate, and they can't take themselves out of the box of electricity. FEMA, all these emergency response groups, all their stuff relies on electricity to function. Like they can't. I've sat in some of these exercises, and they can't take themselves out of. They're just assuming that everything that they pick up and they touch and they go to use, or we're going to drive over here and do this, driving. But what if it's gridlock traffic? None of the streetlights work. It's rush hour when they put this thing off. What if you can't get there? What if your vehicle doesn't work? Well, you just go down I can just go down the list, devil's advocate, which is why I'm not invited back to these things.
The network's down. It goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And that's what they got to practice: realistic grid down, not their it all works silly stuff.
Yeah, I stopped getting invited to that particular exercise because I think Ken actually brought a bunch of copies of one of my reports, Grid Down Death in the Nation, and I saw some of them reading it, and I I'm very frustrated if you don't catch that. I'm sitting in because this is common sense. I mean, the writing's on the wall. We're in danger. This could happen at any given point in time. The people are still trying to get the government to react, and they're worried about all kinds of other stuff. This isn't even on their radar. There's very few congressmen that are even involved in this. We've had multiple bills. I mean, probably what was it, Ken? 6-7 years ago, we had Trent Franks, what was it, the Shield Act. We were close, but at the end of the day, the electric utility industry, they're the second highest lobbyists in DC. They're going to kill it every time. The amount of money they spend in the government, this stuff's never going to get through committee. That's my opinion, but we'll see what happens.
It was $1.2 billion over the past 10 years just for the state senators, federal senators, and Congress persons.
Mm-hmm.
The state, there's records of how many state officials are getting campaign contributions from the electric industry too. It's just it's a strong cartel to break into. It's a very, very powerful. It's well over 1.2 billion now.
So yeah, happy news, Greg. Thanks for having us on. We just cheered up your entire audience.
Yeah. And well, Greg, if whoever contacts me, well, John, and we can make sure we get I'll email it of Grid Down Death of a Nation through starvation, no rule of law, and severe psychosis, for lack of a better term.
Well, guys, we my viewers they've heard these kind of topics before. They know that these are things we got to be concerned about. They know we need to prep and get ready. And what we're doing here, especially when we share these charts, that's a powerful thing. These are things they can take to their friends and family to convince them to get ready and prep. So there's two different levels here of what we need to do. One is we need to try to prevent this from happening in the first place. And that's the kind of stuff, guys, that General Chrosniak and John and I, along with people we talk about, such as Mike Mabee, Command Sergeant Major Mike Mabee, Ambassador Hank Cooper. We were all out here working this stuff. Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, and I bring these people on my channel as I can because we're all out here trying to prevent this stuff in the first place. Because a drop of prevention is better than a gallon of cure. But
amen.
We are so close, and we still got to continue to do it. But we're so close. We got so many threats. This could go down any moment now. We could lose our grid before we can bring it up now, or before we can get it hard now, because we got too much tension going on in the world right now. So you better really, really, really start considering those preps and how to do it. And I did share a link in here early up the chat. I did a video on nuclear bug out zones and all the things to consider for radiation. I got quite a video on that. And I did another bug out zone video too, but I did one specifically on nuclear. Somebody was asking me about in the chat room, not realizing that I actually already had it in my in my videos that I've done previously. I just done so many videos, it's hard for people to find everything. But when you prep, you better consider what you're going to do if you don't have power. Buy the stuff that your grandma, your great grandma used to use. Get a washboard, get a tub. Know what you're going to do when the toilet paper really does run out, and you can't be a toilet paper prepper anymore. I actually did a video on that too. I talked about wild hydrangeas, how to as toilet paper, the leaves. Hey, that's the best stuff in the world. It's better than toilet paper, really. But as a guy who grew up in the woods,
hey, Greg, did you demonstrate it for your audience?
I've actually.
I hope not. I'm not going to pull that one up.
No, I wouldn't do that one. We keep this a family channel. We keep it clean here on this channel. We don't use any bad language, and some people in the chat rooms. And we also, somebody was in here throwing a lot of dispersion on various ethnic groups, and he got kind of pulled out by my moderators from doing that. I tell everybody, look, there's good and bad people anywhere in the world. You guys have been around the world, and you know it just as I do. There's good and bad people of every race, color, creed, and religion, anywhere you go, in any town, city, or hamlet, who would give you the shirt off their back. So let's don't jump into other people like that. It's usually the leaderships and organizations that make profit from warfare or taking over other people and oppressing other people we got to worry about. And we got those in governments all over the world. And, we got something, we call a state that's not so shallow, the other word, here locally within our own domain here that gives us a lot of grief. and keeps things the way they want it. They're looking after their own vested interest, and it's not our interest they're looking after. So we have to be astute to those things. But these are the people that stir up problems. They stir up trouble, and they pit us against each other, and force us into action. Somebody was asking me earlier, a lot of people ask, because they know I'm a space guy. They ask me a lot of space questions in the chat. Look, guys, one of my best friends, I went and carved this Christmas turkey several times, designed the injectors for the V2 rocket that was falling on London when my dad was over there. But, he's really, he's a good guy. He was just an engineer there in Germany at the time. And I've actually carved this Christmas turkey, guys. Conrad K. Dannenberg. Go look him up on Wikipedia. He actually started the Saturn rocket program, and I've for von Braun. And people ask about landing on the moon and stuff like that. Yeah, I actually know Buzz Aldrin, by the way. And I do want to just say that, there's hope for a future. We can have a real future, bright future, if we can just get through these nutty, crazy times we're in right now. We are in some of the nuttiest, craziest times. The risk is off the charts. And it may be that it's going to hit us, that we're going to get sacked by all these things. And if it does, I tell my people that our job will be to survive through this, stand up on the other side, shake it off, and build a better world.
Right.
That's our goal, is to shake it off, survive it, shake it off, and build a better world. I don't know how many of us will get through it. Some of us may not. I'm not the youngest spring chicken in the court here, but I got knowledge and wisdom to share plenty. There used to be a time I would get out and run 12 miles every other day. If you notice, I said there used to be. One of the things a lot of preppers tell you, well, you got to stay in shape. You got to do this. You got to do. Well, yeah, I have done that. But there gets to be a time when some of your mechanisms just aren't quite up to that kind of exertion. But I still get out and work. I mean, I did a video, just a live session a couple of nights ago. I'm standing on a board in the middle of a water tank, my aquaponics system, pushing snow up on the roof of my greenhouse. Apparently, I'm gonna have to do some of that, getting ready for that tonight. So I can still work hard. I can still do crazy things like that, and I'll take a risk or a chance to. And we got to be able to do these things, like running, defend your family if something happens. I just, did a little run up. My daughter thought somebody was in the house, my youngest daughter, and I just do it on video, just as a case in point, to show people that that's what we got to do. We got to man up, sometimes. And that may not fit some of the PC narrative coming around today, the CRT or whatever. We just got to be there for each other. That's one of the things about prepping. We can need to form solid communities, not these neighborhood alliances that Jonathan was talking about. I mean, that's a step, but we got to have some real solid backup organizations where we can really watch our back. And I've started a little tribe network in my channel here. I've got a couple of tribe leads in my chat room, and we got a lot more work to do in that area. Unfortunately, it's just kind of hard to do when you got so many things begging for your time. I do have a day job, plus I got this YouTube channel and another YouTube channel, and I got side business of growing microgreens and a greenhouse and worm farm. So it's kind of hard to keep it all together. Freedom Restoration Foundation, I've started that group. But the thing is, we try. And that's what we all got to do. We just got to keep trying. We got to keep working it, fighting for our freedoms. And that Freedom Restoration Organization, you go to freedomrestorationfoundation.org and go to the Action Center on there. You'll find everything you need to find to be able to contact to find your state and federal representatives, how to contact them, and how to track legislation, what to write, how to write. I mean, that's one of the things you can do too to push the stuff forward. So we can talk to our EMA people. We can take that action, and I'll have Command Sergeant Major Mabee back on here again soon, and we'll talk some more about he's into this freedom of information filings. He's trying to get all the information out to make these companies disclose all the problems they got that they're trying to sweep under the rug. And so we're calling them out. And so that's a very powerful way to try to get these companies doing what they need to do the stuff like Hank Cooper did, Ambassador Cooper, what General Ken Chrosniak's talking about, working with your EMA people. And by the way, Ken is one of those. Ken's a firefighter. So, look, guys, I look at guys like him as a hero, because he just keeps going. He's like the Energizer Bunny, got nothing on the end there.
Right when you were talking, I just got a fire call on my my telephone, it said car versus building. So those, I think the building probably won because I've been to those already.
Wow.
But
All right. So
maybe I'll go and join them later.
we got to be real here. We live our lives. We try to do real stuff. We're trying to make this happen, guys. So just get involved. Help us. Help us is trying to help you by jumping in here and participating in these organizations. I need help with this Freedom Restoration Foundation. I'm looking for volunteers to help us run that and then just maintain the website and stuff like that. I'm doing it right now by myself pretty much. And it's a lot to do when you got so many irons in the fire. I also want to thank Lavera LaKinney for giving me a great super chat tonight. So there's things like that. You know, all these things help. They support us, keep us going here. So I think we're about to close this out. We've been going for an hour and a half, a little better than an hour and a half now. If it gets too long, people don't want to watch after we post this thing later. So what we've covered here is the threats. We've covered some of the things that you can do about it. And we'll bring more of this to you. And we need to talk more about prepping. And for that, I need to get Jonathan back on here to talk the prepping topics some more. And maybe, Ken, I bet you can tell some interesting stories about what you've seen in Europe and places like that and human nature. That might be some worthy stuff that would cause people to really think. And plus, there's just more to talk about on these things. So I'd like to get you both back on here more regular, if that's okay with you guys, because you both got a lot of experience. You both are very hard workers. You're both out there being real heroes. I mean, hero isn't some guy in leotards flying through the air with a cape. It's guys like you who are out there trying to really and truly save the world. Mortal human beings who are giving up a big chunk of their lifetime of freedom and personal fortune to try to make this a better world. That's what a hero really is. And anybody can be your hero once you figure it out. You can do that and get started. Any of you can be a hero. And many of you are. Many of you watching are heroes. So my hats are off to you too. Cowboy Roy Rogers in here. He helps me out a lot with this Freedom Restoration Foundation. And I get a lot of help from several other people in the chat room right now. So I appreciate that from all of them. Let's get some closing words. Ken, what would be your closing thoughts about what we've covered here tonight? And did we miss anything in your opinion?
Well, just that I'm trying to maintain upbeat, but if we can get together, and we're not going to have any changes. We're not going to have any more National Defense Authorization Act or executive orders, even coming down from the state, because the federal agencies have been stonewalling for so long, and they don't want to do it. If they do pass some kind of a stringent regulations on which they won't, because you can't regulate the electric industry, except for some government-owned TVA and some other entities, some other industries. But the pucks, the private utility companies, are hard. You're going to have to go against a very, very powerful electric industry, and money talks, and they have thousands of lobbyists and so on, like Jonathan had mentioned, and you had mentioned, Greg. Is this that you have to keep the faith, and we have to swell it from the tactical, from the John Q. publics out there, and the I like to call myself not one of the unwashed masses and so on. We have to have it bubble up from us, the thrust to try and save our children's lives. Because when you read what Jonathan had written with the Grid Down, Death of a Nation, and when the SHTF, and it's very, very difficult. Only you will be responsible as you're holding your child while they're gut shot for somebody trying to come in and get your food, or die of some pestilence or disease, or have your spouse dragged off to appease the militia and so on. You can change that, start changing it right now, because if this indeed comes down in a worst case situation, that's what's going to happen. That's what happened that's what happened in other areas of the world, and going on in nations of the world right now. That's it. We've had a failure to imagine we're living a comfortable life. Normalcy bias, like Jonathan calls it, is a perfect appropriate term. But things that can change, like Bill Fortune said in a very, very well written book, in a second. One more fast thing. When I was driving down the roads, like in Vietnam with my convoys, my tanks, I remember seeing men, I can see the faces right now. The men age faster than the women do. Anyway, they had their families there, and they had like the hobo thing, the bags on the stick. I mean, they were in the road, but I was so young. I was only 20 years old. I said, get off my road, and I didn't even think about them for a number of years. But it really hit me when I went to. It really hit me when I went to Bosnia. I saw people in very, very tough straits back in 94, at the very beginning of the conflict, or the war. And things are better about a year later when I went back again for the same evaluation. And then, because as a father and a grandfather now, I can empathize with them, because it was completely hopeless. They had electricity, but they had no food and potable water. And it changes your perspective and how quickly things can happen here in a second, especially in an urban area. That's it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg, for having us on again tonight. Really appreciate you including us in this talk. Be happy. I know Ken would too. I would be happy to come on again. Don't lose hope. I don't put a lot of content on YouTube just because there's so many people out there that are, excuse me. No, I don't have the vid. There's so many people out there that are competing for the same space, and there's some really loud voices out there that want to tell people that don't have the financial resources to make some of the plans that they probably should make. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Just stay at home. Paint your doors with a red X, and nobody's going to come and look in your house. And there's so much bad information. I don't have time to kind of go through it all, but make sure you know where you're getting your information from. Ken Chrosniak is, that PowerPoint presentation is truth. It's 8-10 years of work for him putting that PowerPoint presentation. There's 99 pages. There's so much information there for you to glean. Greg mentioned another guy. His name's Michael Mabee. If you haven't been to Michael Mabee's page, go there. Michael's the tip of the spear, fighting the electric utilities. But at the end of the day, we're fighting a industry with unlimited resources. $1.2 billion in the last 10 years, just the federal level, lobbying our congressmen, congresswomen. I tell Michael Mabee all the time that he makes sure he's got private security traveling with him, because he's digging up some dirt on the electric utilities, and they have a stranglehold on the industry. They're the last industry in this country that's self-regulated. They write their own rules. They write their own security standards. Yeah. One of their companies breaks a security standard, they turn themselves in voluntarily. Their own industry writes them a fine, and they pay that fine back into their own industry. To quote the great General Ken Chrosniak, it's a self-licking ice cream cone. It's not fixing the problem. So, but don't lose hope. There is hope for the future, in the sense that God is in control, and things are going to happen regardless of what we do. They're going to work out. He's sovereign, and they're going to work out his manner. So don't be negative. People ask me all the time, how can you be in this industry and be talking about all this negative stuff all the time? I go to bed, I play with my kids. We'll be playing Uno here in just a couple of minutes, probably, when I get home. And I put my head down on my pillow and I sleep soundly. So,
Amen.
So,
me too.
Yep. But thanks a lot for having us on.
That's part of it. Don't panic. I always tell my people, don't panic. I always say it on this video, on this channel, don't panic. Don't ever panic. Do the best you can. And then rest in the assurance you've done the best you can. Now, some people can do more than others, but do what you can. But, these are things we can work on. We can all, even if you just go buy a can of beans, extra can of beans a week, you'll be surprised eventually that'll add up. But I am concerned that we may be on the precipice. This stuff may be going down in a hurry. So this is why we really need to pay attention right now, guys. It could happen in a big hurry. But I want to throw back one thing. I was the chairman of the policy committee of the National Space Society for 10 years. I was the executive vice president for 9 of those. And one of those years, I was chairman of the executive committee, which meant I was the CEO of the National Space Society. And that's a small, really, a grassroots advocacy type organization, education and advocacy. And we had maybe at best, our best years, $1 million, $2 million budget. We didn't have that much, but that was for running offices and everything that we did. I think it was about half that when I was basically trying to save the society from bankruptcy at one point, but when I had my tenure. But one thing I did learn, and I learned even before that because I used to be the chairman of our phone tree, is that a small group of people, if they get real active, can have a disproportionate effect in legislation. That's why grassroots activity is one thing that we've not seen in our power grid defense community, and maybe something we ought to start building, because you'd be surprised when people don't have a vested interest in something, unlike the industry people that congressmen always see. The congressmen get really surprised when you're in there meeting with them and they discover that your truck, the guys meeting with them are truckers and housewives and plumbers are coming in to talk to them about an issue they care about, which has nothing to do with their industry. That really turns their head. They go, what? You not work in the industry and you're doing this? I've had that reaction from quite a few congressmen and staffers, and don't ignore the staffers because they're the ones that make things really happen. I have had very huge impacts on federal legislation doing this, guys, huge impacts, very disproportionately huge impacts. So don't discount what we can do as individuals, especially if we work together. Just remember that one individual, that one student who stood in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square. It wasn't just a tank and 4 tanks there. There was a whole battalion of tanks behind there that couldn't move, mainly because that guy had the bravery to stand there, and probably the guy in the first tank had the compassion not to run him over. So somehow those two events and left a mark, but it's a lesson to the future. We do have hope. Don't give up hope. Never, as long as you got breath in your lungs, never give up hope. And the other thing is, always tell the people around you you love them, because you never know when will be your last chance, just even with everyday life events, guys. Never pass up an opportunity to tell your loved ones you love them. And the way I usually close my videos out a lot of times, I tell people, just as light dispels darkness, love dispels hate. So go out and shine your love light in the world, because that's what we need. We need to get this hatred down, because it's from hatred that people do spiteful things. It's from hatred that people attack a power grid. It's helpful. So there's many ways we can work this problem. We can do it that way. We can do it, hey, prayer, getting to your congressman, talking to your EMA people, working with people like Mabee, and Impact America, all these things that we're throwing out here. There are many avenues y'all can work on. Let's try to keep this from happening in the first place. If it does happen, the final thing is you better be prepping. You better be prepping right now anyway, and prep big time. And that's one of John's big areas. So I got to definitely talk that some more with him on this channel. So guys, I thank y'all, General Chrosniak and John Hollerman, for being here tonight. To get both of you here in one night, that was awesome. That, we've got this to me is a star-studded talk we've had here tonight. Now, I guess my channel, I must tell too much truth. Sometimes it's hard for me to get views. Like I've seen channels where some guy just walking along, hey, I think we got to take care of the power grid and something's happening. And, they may have totally inaccurate information about it. Like saying, for example, one guy says, well, if you're on the daylight side, or if you're on the night side, you don't have to worry about a CME. Not really. No, yes, you do. Stuff like that. But they'll get, their channel might be a quarter the size of my channel, and they'll get 10 times more views for something video like that. I go, really? And I'm bringing you guys generals and ambassadors, and so share my videos widely, people. If you're in the chat room, share this video widely and tell people, hey, you got to watch this stuff. We're trying to bring you the real stuff. You just got a major presentation tonight to use this thing that Ken has sweated over for so long to put together. That is a major presentation, is now freely available to you to use as a resource that you can go out with and convince your friends and family and so forth that they need to prep, but also you can use that to help people understand we got to get this power grid hardened, maybe to work with your local EMA people and things like that. Okay, I've not said enough of all that. I want to thank all the people coming here tonight who watched this video. I want to thank the mods for all the work they've done, because they've been busy keeping the chat room clean. And it's not always cleanness. YouTube monitors for certain things said, and if you say things that don't fit their community standards, they can still knock a channel out over that. And my mods are aware of that. Some of the deletions weren't for potty language or anything like that. Some people may wonder why their comment got deleted. And it's just that the mods have to take care of business. And I did one or two myself. And it's nothing against the person that got the comment deleted sometimes. It's just try to keep the powers that be off our backs. We got to keep it clean, and we have to stay compliant. This platform don't belong to us. It's not a free speech platform. So we have to stay compliant with their rules if we use it. So we just have to keep those things in mind. But I also want to thank, we had, like I said, Lavera Lakini gave me an awesome super chat tonight. I want to thank her for that. And guys, just stop and think about these things. I'm going to come back on here later tonight and do another live session like I usually do on Wednesday nights, which is just an open discussion. No, not a special topic, but I got to go out and tend to some things in my greenhouse. We're about to get into the storm, ice and snowstorm here, and I got to get some heat stuff marshaled out there tonight. So I got a bunch of work to do. I'll probably have another chat session later tonight. So guys, just keep that in mind. Those of you that are in the chat room. And again, guys, General Chrosniak, John Hollerman, thank you, sirs. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank y'all for being here. And with this, we're going to be gone, guys. So I'm going to stop the share of this video here, of that part.
Thanks, Greg.
And thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone, take care, and just go forth and have a great week. And do go to bed and sleep well tonight. Do what you can, but don't panic over it. Don't fret. Just do the best you can.